Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering woke DEI boss humiliated in med school plagiarism scandal. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. Coming from the Daily Wire, DEI official at UCLA School of Medicine massively plagiarized her dissertation on DEI. DEI is a silly enough concept you would think you would not have to plagiarize. But no, not in this case. Dr. Natalie Perry decided she needed to plagiarize her dissertation because it was too damn hard to write. UCLA is a serious offender in woke medicine. From Blaze Media, Woke Medicine Kills, 10 examples of how DEI is creating the next public health crisis. First, we'll get into her getting disgraced and exposed as a fraud, and then we'll talk about the dangers of woke medicine working its way into our culture. UCLA says Natalie Perry's job is to teach medical students to do what's right. Her academic career is built on fraud. Recent headlines about UCLA School of Medicine suggest that the institution has lost its focus. Instead of brushing up on organic chemistry, its students were subjected to lessons on indigenous women and two spirits. Future doctors had to take a class on structural racism and were led in a Free Palestine chant by a Hamas-praising guest speaker. And it gets crazier than that. All first-year students are required to take a class on structural racism, which of course doesn't exist, but they try to push the idea. The students were forced to get on their knees by one of their lecturers and were forced to say a non-secular prayer to Mama Earth during a mandatory structural racism class. The prayer also included a benediction for Black, brown, and houseless people who die because of the capitalist lie, as they call it, of private property. Mama Earth, according to the lecturer, told the kneeling students, was never meant to be bought, sold, pimped, or played. The lecturer also blasted modern medicine as white science, which she meant as a negative, but might be a compliment to white people because medicine is pretty advanced and a lot of miracles do happen through modern science, but she meant it in a negative way. And according to a UCLA medical student, they say left-wing ideology is laced throughout all 4 years of the school. Is it possible that any of this political ideology, all of this agenda nonsense, does it have any place in training doctors to care for patients? Do you think that going into a medical school, that doctors should learn patient care, they should learn critical thinking, they should learn analysis of medical conditions? Yes, that's the kind of thing they should be focused on, not trying to work around and deal with academic frauds, trying to push racist, cultist agendas like DEI. The school also made plans to segregate students by race for courses on left-wing ideology, and 2 of its psychiatry residents championed revolutionary suicide. What is revolutionary suicide? Have you ever heard of it? From the Washington Free Beacon, revolutionary suicide. UCLA psychiatrist cheers self-immolation in leaked audio. The medical school is glorifying self-harm, violating CDC guidance, according to experts. UCLA Medical School Psychiatry Department hosted a talk earlier this month that glorified self-immolation, that is, setting yourself on fire, literally. Not like spiritually, not like getting excited and getting into the mood. No, literally self-immolation as a form of revolutionary suicide, raising concerns from prominent doctors and a deepening public relations crisis that has embroiled the elite medical school. And back to academic fraud. So why is an elite medical school actually doing this? Why are they going in this direction? One reason is its commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion ideology. UCLA has a DEI program called Cultural North Star, and at the medical school, it's led by Natalie J. Perry. That's this lady. Her official biography says her job is to embed our aspirational Cultural North Star's value in our organizational DNA. UCLA honored Perry last month for teaching students to do what's right, saying her empathy and racial listening are to thank for her success as an educator and a leader. According to a Daily Wire and City Journal investigation, however, Perry's academic career is based on fraud. Perry has published a single paper, a 2014 PhD dissertation at the University of Virginia, about how colleges should create larger DEI programs. An analysis of the paper found it written with the worst sort of plagiarism, reproducing large swaths of text directly from other authors without citations. The scale of the plagiarism suggests that Perry lacks both ethics and competence and raises questions about academic programs that push DEI. Now, who knows if she really wrote it? Maybe she had a student write it for her and just paid them. Still, that's not really reflecting well on Ms. Perry. Perry's dissertation lifted passages from 10 other papers. In key portions of her text, she copied almost every paragraph from other sources without attribution. She fails even to mention at least 4 of the 10 plagiarized papers anywhere in her dissertation. In the first 3 pages of Perry's paper, Faculty Perceptions of Diversity at Highly Selective Research-Intensive University, suggests that she did not even bother to read beyond the first page of papers from which she stole. Her dissertation's second sentence reproduces verbatim part of a sentence on the first page of a paper by Adriana Kezar, Peter Eckel, Melissa Contreras-McGavin, and Stephen John Quayle. Her third paragraph, without citation, lifts more than 100 words from the first page of a paper by Angela Locks, Sylvia Hurtado, Nicholas Bowman, and Leticia Asaguera. In some cases where Perry did include parenthetical citations, she wasn't citing the papers whose text she had lifted. Instead, she simply reproduced the citations included from those stolen excerpts. So when she was copying material from other people's papers, and there were some citations in parentheses, those citations were placed by the original author. It was just part of the copy and paste thing. So she was like, oh yeah, this looks good. I'll just copy and paste this. Look at me. I'm citating everybody. No, you're not citing. You're not citating either. You're just copying and pasting. And you give someone a doctorate degree for that? I don't think so. Come on now. A core part of Perry's dissertation involves summarizing work done by Professors Robert Quinn and John Rohrbach. Instead of citing them directly, however, Perry cribs summaries from other academics. Perry copied and pasted almost all of a nearly 1,000-word passage from a paper by Chad Hartnell, Amy Yi Oh, and Angelo Kanicki without quoting or crediting the authors. So she's copying and pasting summaries of other people summarizing the work of people she's plagiarizing. It's plagiarism on top of plagiarism. The rest of Perry's analysis of Quinn and Rohrbach's work is largely copied, unquoted, and unattributed from a 2000 paper by John Smart. In a section titled Positioning Diversity Leadership in Higher Education, Perry copies almost every sentence from one of several other papers. In no case does she credit the actual source. Finally, in a section on organizational culture, Perry duplicates language from a variety of other authors. Perry presented her paper as qualitative research because she chatted with what appear to be 10 of her colleagues at the University of Virginia who sat on the Faculty Retention Task Force and counted their musing as data. But when the paper gets to this section, where plagiarism wasn't possible, Perry includes the following jumbled passage that includes a glaring spelling error. The positionality of the participants informed the perspective on the origins of the commission in response to the needs of the various, as opposed to various. She's incredible, this lady. In response to the needs of the various stakeholders within the university, the commission addressed issues of diversity on the faculty, undergraduate, graduate, and university level. The section of her original text suggests that her plagiarism could be used to mask glaring academic deficiencies. In other words, she can't write. So if she copies and pastes other people who can write, it makes her look at least smart enough. And then they give her a PhD over this. Moreover, Perry, in her references section, fails to list some of the papers that she cites parenthetically in the body of the dissertation, a telltale sign that she had simply copied those citations from somewhere else. A legitimate academic field never would have found this dissertation plausible. Perry and UCLA, her employer, did not return requests for comment. Entrepreneur Mark Cuban recently argued that DEI policies don't necessarily lower an organization's expectations. But for Harvard, UVA, and UCLA Medical School, where Perry earned her master's, PhD, and DEI position respectively, this is evidently not the case. These institutions have dramatically lowered expectations for favored groups and pushed a cohort of scholars through the system without enforcing basic standards of academic integrity or basic competency. Ultimately, Natalie Perry is to blame for her misconduct, but these institutions of higher learning share some fault for permitting such shoddiness to stand unchallenged. When you submit papers to an institution, when you apply for jobs at another institution. They are supposed to check your work on some level, not just smile at you and say, sure, you're diverse, let's move you along. That's what they've been doing, and now it's getting exposed. From Blaze Media, Woke Medicine kills 10 examples of how DEI is creating the next public health crisis. And this is serious because it's really affecting how medical schools train doctors, and it's impacting their standards of care. The left's woke agenda is chock full of phony public health crises, racism, climate change, inaccessible gender-affirming care. But there's a real public health crisis on the horizon, and it goes by the name of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Do No Harm, an organization founded on the principle of protecting healthcare from the disastrous consequences of identity politics, has revealed that 23 of America's top 25 medical schools now have anti-racism instruction as the core part of their curriculum, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Here are 10 examples, although there are many more, of how DEI is festering blight on the medical field. The first one we already heard about, that's the mandatory course on structural racism at UCLA. Next, in February of this year, a man named Dante King, a guest faculty member of the University of California at San Francisco School of Medicine, delivered a lecture titled Diagnosing Whiteness and Anti-Blackness, White Psychopathology, Collective Psychosis, and Trauma in America. Here's just one quote from King's lecture. The historical record has well documented white people's narcissistic personality disorder and insecurities, along with their internalized distortions, fear, and perversions about African people. In their relationship with the black race, whites are psychopaths, and their behavior represents an underlying biologically transmitted proclivity with roots deep in their evolutionary history. And then he asks the audience, how many of you could see the proclivity that evolved deep within the evolutionary history of whiteness by show of hands? And then he goes on to say, some people are sitting here, quote, oh no, I don't want to raise my hand. That's called denial. Very, very sick racist garbage. And also, top-ranked Harvard Medical School has activist courses like Social Change in the Practice of Medicine, in which they're teaching aspiring doctors how to be important advocates for social change. And at George Washington University School of Medicine, students enroll in courses titled How to Talk Race, Power, and Privilege in Classroom and Clinical Settings, moving beyond bystanding to disrupting racism, beyond the binary, navigating pregnancy and affirming care for people with diverse gender identities, confronting U.S. history, we must end racism to end health disparities. And at the Indiana University School of Medicine, first-year students in basic anatomy classes are taught that gender is a social construct, that sex and gender fall along a continuum rather than being a binary, and that man and woman gender types are oversimplifications. In Upstate Medical University in Syracuse, New York, they established a diversity task force that produced a lengthy report demanding that healthcare professionals explicitly acknowledge that race and racism are at the root of all these health disparities, and that students be trained in bystander intervention for bias. Medical students at the University of Minnesota are required to take an oath pledging to honor all indigenous ways of healing that have been historically marginalized by Western medicine and fight white supremacy, colonialism, and the gender binary. And that's not all. In 2022, the president of the American Association of Medical Colleges, David Skorton, said, we believe this topic, diversity, equity, and inclusion, deserves just as much attention from learners and educators at every stage of their careers as the latest scientific breakthroughs. The University of Pennsylvania, an Ivy League school, guarantees admission with no MCAT required for black students who meet the GPA and internship requirements. These students also get a 50% discount on tuition. What's an MCAT? It's a standardized test like the SATs to prove that you're smart enough to get into that medical school. And lastly, the majority of medical school applications now have DEI questions, including questions regarding dedication to DEI and DEI-related activism as part of the screening process. Further, the MCAT itself has been altered to create more equity in admissions. 1/4 of the questions are now about social issues and psychology. Even the United States Medical Licensure Examination, which allows medical school graduates to practice medicine, has been adapted to be a pass-fail examination. The one-step exam is usually the biggest decider in selecting applicants for residency in programs. But now numbered scores are not allowed because the lower average scores are keeping minorities from getting into competitive residencies. And that's how DEI has been affecting the medical industry. DEI is being rolled back nationwide, just not fast enough. We need DEI eliminated immediately before it does more damage to our society. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.